Hello everyone, welcome to a new video. Welcome back. Welcome if you're new. I'm Charlene, also known as Wonky Willems. Thank you so much for being here. Today I wanted to share a little bit of the behind the scenes process of how I go from what I call a dirty sketch in my sketchbook and the iterations I go through to get it to its final form to transfer onto my finished piece of paper before I start painting. Please ignore the lawnmowers in the back if you can hear them. The neighbors are cutting the lawn, and this just happened to be the only time I had to film this video. So without further ado, let's get into the supplies that I use when I am trying to finalize a sketch from my sketchbook to a more finished piece. So before I get started, I do want to mention this is just the process that I have found that works for me. There are several of ways that you could go about doing this. There are several of different supplies you could use to do this. This is just happens to be what I have, what I like, and what works for me. So don't be afraid to just take bits and pieces of what I do and adapt it to what works for you and what you have available. So what I like to use my sketchbook to get my ideas out, to kind of figure out the illustrations that I want to turn into finished pieces. I also like to use just regular old printer paper. I don't want to use anything fancy. You can use tracing paper as well. I just happen to like computer printer paper a little bit better. I also have my paper that I want my final artwork to be on. This happens to be a hot press 140-pound watercolor paper. I also have a little light box here that I got on Temu many years ago. I love this thing. In the past, before I had a light box, I would use, like on a sunny day, I would use the window. I've also used a happy lamp panel. I've used my iPad with just like the bright white canvas behind it. So this is not the only way. You can get creative. But this is a pivotal piece in my process. I also need washi tape. I also use this pink Pilot Color NO. I also use this Prismacolor Colorase in Carmine Red. Definitely an eraser, and I also use like a fine liner pen to ink my final piece. Now, before I started doing this, to be completely transparent, I used to just take a picture with my iPad and I would clean up the sketch and like almost make it with perfect edges in Procreate, but I felt like the pieces came out less organic. And I'm really leaning more into having organic lines and letting them be not so perfect. So that is how this process came about. While the pieces do still turn out a lot more refined and perfected than, say, the dirty sketch in my sketchbook, I still know that there are, little mistakes and imperfections, and I feel like it just adds to the piece instead of having everything completely symmetrical like I can do in Procreate. So, step one of what I do is I just brainstorm in my sketchbook ideas, which I'm sure we all have, or I hope we have, sketchbooks full of little doodles, and you're always wondering, like, what am I going to do with these little doodles? Well, you can turn them into amazing pieces of art. So let's choose one that we can turn into something together. Also, another thing that I like to do is once I have one element or thing refined, I will reuse that element so I'm not having to do double the work. For example, as you can see here, I have already completely refined this piece. This is the sketch right here that I used to create said finished artwork, but I also have this little doodle down here where you can see that I have two little bodies here with the little dogs and the cats, and all I did was take this girl and I put her behind my page, and I used that body and traced that body and then added in the new elements. So you're kind of like recycling your own work and kind of just making it go further. I did change the hair, so yeah. And then I also used this body to, I think it's in here somewhere, create the boy character right here. So just, yeah, use bits and pieces of what you have already created instead of recreating the wheel every time. So for the sake of ease of this video, I'm just going to choose something simple that we can refine together. I am kind of thinking maybe this worm with the legs. Here's some more of the worms with the legs. I don't want to do anything too complicated because this video would be a million hours long. So yeah, let's do that worm with the legs. Let's choose one that I feel inspired by. I think this one is a good form. So what I do is I will take a piece of printer paper, and I usually just cut it up into little squares here. I usually fold it and tear it, but I have scissors, so I will just cut it today. It doesn't have to be perfect, just as long as you have enough surface to draw to scale what it is that you want to do. I personally like to work small. If you want to create a large illustration, you do that. That's just not my style. As you can see, I did already start to refine the worms here, so I kind of have a guide for myself that we can refer to as we go along. Keep your little stack of papers handy because you're going to go through quite a few of them. The first one is the hardest, I will admit, because you're kind of going in blind. So I see my worm here, and you either A, can use that with your light to help you, or you can go ahead and freehand draw it. So what I think that I'm going to do, I think I'm going to use the assistance of the light. The only thing is I do know that I want to make this worm bigger. That's going to be the challenging bit. So I'm going to put that underneath here, turn my light up, take my paper, put it over top, and kind of start to sketch how I actually want this to look. So I'm going to sketch larger than what was in my sketchbook because I know that I want it larger. And I usually do one element at a time. This way you can kind of tweak things, change things. Then I'm going to turn this off. Now I'm going to see, do I like this shape of the worm? It's a little boxy, but it's okay. If I don't like it and I want to change it, I'm telling you, this is going to get time consuming. And to save some paper, because I have quite a bit here still, I'm just going to now take this initial one, use a little piece of washi, turn my light back up, take a new piece of paper over the top of this one. And I'm going to start changing that shape slightly so it's not so boxy to me. So it kind of just flows a little better. And then sometimes if you start getting lost in the color you're using for the layers, you can switch different colored pens, pencils for your layers so that they kind of make more sense to you. So I do like that a little better. We can compare. This was number one, how it was very boxy. This one is a little smoother. I do like that. I might change this tail just a little bit. Okay, that's good. I also do like to kind of mark like where they came from. Like this is number one, this is number two. It really interests me to see the progression. All right, so number one can be set to the side here. Now we have number two. So now I want to work on adding my little legs on there, right? I am going to refer back to my sketchbook. I do like this leg, But I also know that I did draw a couple other worms with legs. I'm going to refer to those as well because maybe I like the legs better on a different piece. Or maybe the size might be a little better from a different piece. I think the size of these legs will match pretty well with this worm. So I think we're going to use this one. And it's really about piecemealing together work you have already created to create a more refined piece. It's time consuming, but it's nothing like earth shattering or brand new. I didn't invent something, that's for sure. So I do notice, hopefully you can see it, I do like this leg on the left more than the right. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to use this leg twice. So I'm just going to go ahead. Do I like the placement? Yeah, right there looks pretty good. And I will probably refine these little toes just a little bit better. Turn it off to see if I like that. Yep, I like that. Now what I'm going to do is so that it's almost like identical. Whoops. I'm going to take this and I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to draw it on the back side. Okay. So now I'm then going to just put this down and I am going to retrace so I have both legs on one side, like that. So now I have my worm with both the little legs. So then I need to go through and kind of look at, I do like where the knee placement is on this worm, so I kind of want to borrow that. So let's see. So I think right here is where I would draw that one. And that one. All right, so I am going to stop talking. I am going to put this in fast forward, and I am going to go ahead and get the face and the little worm lines on there, and then we will work on getting this transferred to our final piece. Okay, I do have a sketch that I am pretty happy with. I did add some flowers in the background just to give a little more interest. I do feel like at this point I am done referring to my sketchbook, so now it's a matter of getting this more to a finished state. So I am going to move on to my third piece here. And because I am starting to now include some taller items, as you can see, like my paper wasn't big enough, I do want to use a little bit of a bigger piece of paper. I think I need maybe one more piece of tape here. So I will say, like, there's a couple of lines that overlap that I don't really care for. I did try to clean some of them up. I also want to kind of set a straight line, like where the ground is, so that everything kind of looks even. Because it looks like my feet are they're not even, like one leg is longer than the other. So on my new sheet of paper, I'm going to mark for myself where I want the ground to be so that I can draw my elements on there a lot straighter. Okay, so I'm feeling somewhat confident that I can go ahead and use my pen, but to be on the safe side, I am going to do one more sketch in pencil just to kind of get my, I don't know, my whole illustration kind of like situated. This way I know that, you know, my final one, there won't be any mistakes or lines that are going to mess me up when I do my final transfer. Okay, now that I have my worm like in a more straight standing fashion, I will now go ahead and add my flowers in the background. And I'm kind of going to ignore the worm because I do know that in my number 2 layer, my legs are not even. So I'm kind of just going to play with the placement to where my flowers in the background look like they're straight with the new layer 3 piece of paper. Alright, so my number 3, I do feel pretty good about this. I'm probably going to cut it off like right here, maybe right here. So I am just going to mark that I want this to cut off here. So I think this looks pretty good for my 3rd layer. I feel confident enough that my lines are clear enough for me to move forward to my final inked piece. I am just going to redouble check some of these lines that need to pull through to the bottom here. They just looked a little off to me. That looks a little bit better. I'm just kind of re-emphasizing any lines that look a little too light that I might miss in my final one. This doesn't look right, so we'll go like that. And I feel like all these little tweaks that you do just make your piece better each time. Yes, you could definitely do this in Procreate or Photoshop or whatever you do, but I don't know, I have really been enjoying doing this in a more traditional manner, and not everybody has access to digital items, so yeah. And another really cool thing that I've been enjoying is taking like each iteration and gluing them into my sketchbook and then coloring them in later. It kind of is a great way to fill in blank spots in your sketchbook. Alright, so number 2 done. Alright, and I'm going to tape down number 3. Make sure I get rid of these eraser bits so I don't have any like bumps when I'm doing my inking. Now, to start my finished layer, I do know that this is a complete straight line, so before I even turn on my light box, I am going to create a straight line for myself because I already know that we need a straight line for the finished illustration. And I need something to clean my pen. It's got a lot of ink on it. Make sure it's working nice. Yes. Okay, we have our line. I will say I do get a little nervous sometimes when I am doing the inking. Try not to overthink it. I know it happens to me all the time. If you make a mistake, that's okay. You don't have to redo everything. Just move on, keep going. And I am just going to start tracing very carefully everything that we just did. Okay, so here is my final piece. Now seeing it inked out, I actually do want to add a couple more things. I want to add, I think, another leaf over here and a leaf to this side So I'm just going to add that straight onto this piece. There, I like that a lot better with the leaves added onto it. So this piece is, in my mind, officially ready to be transferred to our finished work paper. So I'm just going to get this off of here. I'm also going to measure how big I need to cut my other piece. I'm not going to actually cut my my finished work piece of paper. I just kind of want to give myself enough room on there so that I can have a border if I want to frame my finished piece. So I kind of want to get a general idea of the size. So this is, for easy numbers, we'll say 3 inches by 2 inches. So then for me, I like to leave at least 1/4 of an inch on each side. So we're looking at like 2.5 by 3.5. So I'm going to get my finished piece of paper out, which I have a piece left that I cut off from this one. It looks like I got some paint on it. I don't know if I'm going to really care or not about that. I think I'm just going to start with a fresh piece of paper just to be on the safe side, because I don't want to transfer it and then start painting and then I'm like, oh, I wish I would have just used a clean piece of paper to start with. Okay. So the reason that I use a dark ink for my last, run on my illustration is because the watercolor paper is a lot thicker than the printer paper, so I need to be able to see through that thick paper. And I do also switch the color that I transfer onto my paper. I don't use pink, I use red. I don't have really a reason why. It's just what I do. I think that this Cold Erase, I think it erases a little bit easier than the Pilot Color NO, and I think that's probably why I do that. All right. So because the paper is thicker, it's kind of hard to see with the light on, so I'm actually going to turn the light off while I draw this pass. So just dimming the light a little bit makes it a lot easier to see. And then I know that I want at least 1/4 inch down here. I'm actually going to be generous and give myself a little bit more. I'm going to kind of keep it as straight as possible. Maybe I should give myself a little more so I can cut it later. Okay, and then I am just going to also tape down my watercolor paper so it's not moving around on me. And again, I'm going to use the ruler to create that straight line because that's kind of been like our grounding point this entire process. Okay, and I am just literally going to gently trace this. I am not going to press hard at all because I do want these lines to disappear once I start painting my illustration. So I am using the lightest pressure I can to where I'm able to see it right now. I will say this did take a little practice to be able to kind of get my eyes used to seeing it at this level. It kind of plays with your mind a little bit. You're like, okay, am I actually seeing this line? Am I not seeing this line? And then I think there's also that consciousness of, oh, this is the final piece, I don't want to mess it up. But you are also doing it in pencil now, so if you mess it up, you can erase it and just erase it gently so you don't mess up your nice paper. Go slow. Keep breathing while you do it. I find that's very important, is to keep breathing when you're trying to concentrate and draw more refined lines. If you hold your breath, at least for me, I feel like I mess up if I'm holding my breath. So now I have my final drawing transferred to my nice paper and it is ready to be painted. I think it looks pretty cute. It is very light. I will also go over it with a kneaded eraser before I start painting to make it even lighter. I don't want to do that yet because I don't want to lose any of the lines until I actually sit down to start painting it. But I hope that you guys enjoyed seeing my process of how I go from a sketchbook sketch into a final piece. It's not, you know, like a groundbreaking process, but it's kind of cool to see how artists, you know, go from one thing to another. Like we literally went from this to this, then to this, then to this one, then our final one, and onto our nice paper where we can start painting. I actually have quite a few more sketches that I want to transfer onto nice paper because I really do want to start getting some of these illustrations completed this summer. And yeah, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you again for being here. Until next time, I hope you have an amazing, beautiful, wonderful day. Goodbye.